So during last year's Cyber Monday sale of the FMB shop, I got a bit curious when I saw they had quite a few Scale 200 models on offer, and one of them was also this Herpa Snapfit model. And as I've never really taken a closer look at any of them, I wanted to find out for myself what it's all about, and that is what we will do right after the drop. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Airbus A321LR of TAP Air Portugal in Scale 200. And here at the front of the box we have a cutout, so we can see all the parts of the aircraft already. The back side of the box, well, here we then have the TAP Air Portugal branding. We have, well, kind of the instructions of how to assemble the aircraft, and then we actually have a backstory towards the aircraft, both in Portuguese and in English. If you're interested in it, you can pause the video right here. So we will take a look at this Herpa Snapfit model in Scale 200, and it is important to mention that it is Scale 200 and not Scale 500, because Herpa Scale 500 models also often arrive as Snapfit models, but there it's not on purpose. Here in Scale 200 it very much is so. So when we remove the individual parts here from the blister, well, we can see that we have pretty much everything that we need for assembling this A321LR. Now, something that is maybe not a big surprise, but I still think is worth mentioning, is the fact that, of course, all parts of the Snapfit model are made out of plastic. But one thing that surprised me already here was actually that the fuselage has quite a bit of weight in it. So it's not just an empty plastic tube. There is clearly something in there to give it a bit of weight, which actually was quite satisfying when holding in your hands. Now, before we get to the assembly of this aircraft model, it is worth mentioning that this aircraft model does come with a stand, which even has a little print on it. So as with all Snapfit aircraft models, regardless of manufacturer, the whole point is, of course, that you still need to partially self-assemble the aircraft model. Now, as mentioned, there are instructions on the back of the box, but honestly speaking, anyone who has ever seen an aircraft model will not have any problems assembling this aircraft model. One thing, however, I think is worth noting is the way how Herpa has actually made the system of how the wings are attached to each other. Now, with other manufacturers, you slot the wings into the side. I've shown this with a recent review of a Discover Airlines from Limox wings, but with Herpa, the wings basically interlock into each other. That could be a nice system, but as you can see, it's actually rather fiddly. And as all these parts are made out of plastic, for me this is always something where I get a little bit nervous that it could break. For sure, this is not meant to be disassembled and assembled many times, so most likely once you've assembled it, you will never ever touch the model again. But now that we have assembled the aircraft model, let's take a closer look at it and find out what it actually has to offer to collectors. And here she is, the Airbus A321LR, which of course is the long-reach version of the A321neo, in the current standard delivery of TAP Air Portugal. Now, the first thing and the most obvious thing is, of course, that we do not have any landing gear on this aircraft model. So this is something you need to be aware of. If you want to buy Herpa Snapfit models, they never come with landing gear, which could be a major turnoff for some collectors. But let's see what else the aircraft model has or doesn't have. If we take a look at the tail section, we find the TAP Air Portugal branding on the vertical stabilizer. On the fuselage, we then have the web address of the airline, the full registration code of the aircraft, as well as the Portuguese flag. Towards the very tail of the aircraft, we do have a bit of detailing around the APU exhaust. And then if we move to the front of the aircraft, we can once again see the TAP Air Portugal branding and writing. We do also have a Star Alliance logo, of which the airline is a member. But notice we do not have any other printed details here in form of static ports or sensors or anything like that. Underneath the cockpit windows, however, we do find the name of the aircraft, which leads us to the cockpit section itself. But this is also really rather bare-boned. We do have the cockpit windows and the typical black neo mask around those windows, But that's it. Also here, no other printed details. But what about the engines? Well, they have been kept in all white, just as most of the fuselage, but do have the silver leading edge printed on, as well as the aircraft type specification. But just imagine some safety markings here, or some hatches that would really have elevated the aircraft model overall. But the physical detailing of the engines is actually really rather nice, especially here from the front with the engine fan blades, and we can even look through the engines. Very cool. Then on the fuselage, just above the wings, we have the emergency exit printed on, which leads us straight to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. And here, at least when it comes to the physical detailing, I think Herpa has done a pretty solid job with the wings. When looking at the top side, we can see the different flap slats and spoilers carved out quite nicely, and we even have some different shades of grey for additional detailing, but it would have been lovely here to also have some markings for the emergency exits printed on. The underside of the wings then has more nice physical detailing, and we also here find the full registration code of the aircraft once again. My highlight on the wings, however, are the winglets, which I think look really lovely with the TAP Air Portugal color scheme. A quick look at the belly of the aircraft reveals a little bit more physical detailing and a hole in the fuselage that of course is needed, firstly given that the aircraft does not have any landing gear, and secondly because we have a stand included with the aircraft model. And then last but certainly not least, we do also have the doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft and also here at the front section of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A321LR in the current standard livery of TAP Air Portugal as a 1:200 scale snapfit model from Herpa Wings. And what can we say about this aircraft model? So I get it, the fact that Herpa's snapfit models do not have landing gear is a major drawback for many collectors, and I would definitely include myself in that. These are for sure also the most bare-boned and basic Scale 200 models you can find on the market. And while Herpa snapfit models are relatively cheap, often price ranged somewhere around 20 to 30 euros, I still think it is too expensive for the amount of details we are getting. However, when you can get these snapfit models on a discount, well then it becomes more reasonable. But regardless of how much the snapfit models from Herpa Wings might be discounted, it cannot take away from the fact that the competition might just be a few euros more, but you do also get so much more, as for example with the Limox model that I reviewed, which does come with landing gear, which is a major plus compared to Herpa's snapfit range. So unfortunately, I think with Herpa's snapfit range, Herpa is once again falling into their own trap. Sure, they are cheaper than the competition, but they are also offering way less, and despite being cheaper, are still too expensive for what they are actually offering. Furthermore, if I compare the assembly process, while not hugely different between Herpa Wings and for example Limox Wings, the assembly process with Herpa Wings was just much more fiddly and less pleasant. But before I make it sound like I really do not like this product at all, that's not the case. I mean, I was positively surprised by the weight of the fuselage, I had not expected that, and I mean the finish itself is actually also pretty good. The print quality itself is great, so there are some positives about the model. I just don't really see it fitting into the market price-wise and what it offers in detailing. It's a little bit off in both perspectives. Nonetheless, as I mentioned, if you can get a Herpa snapfit model on a discount, well then I think it becomes a much better deal. But what's your experience with snapfit models from Herpa Wings or any other brand? Let me know in the comments section below your thoughts about this type of Scale 200 model. And with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed it, then feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, see you in another video here on the channel. I'm checking out, and bye.